Don't knock it until you try it. Open frame generators actually have a lot more pros than they do cons over enclosed frame generators. These are lighter, they're also cheaper, not to mention they're easier to service, and most of the times you get more service hours out of them due to the fact that they are an open frame, so they generally run cooler all the time. And you can also spot issues that are maybe small at the moment, they could become bigger later, that could then jeopardize the life of your engine. This generator also has a feature that no other brands carry right now, is a 2-wire start. That means if you have a home energy backup system such as this one from EG4, this means this generator can automatically start and stop by utilizing this 2-wire system. We'll go over a little bit more of that in a minute or two, and thanks for GenMax for sending this out so we could test it. Even though they did send this out to me, it still gets the same pros and cons at the end of this video. So we're going to go through it, look at all the options that it has, what it does, what it doesn't do, and then we'll see if this is a good generator for you. Now this is going to come with a 5.8 gallon fuel tank. You will have the gas gauge right on the top, and this runs on 87 octane fuel. There is no reason to run 91 because you will need more compression, more timing. It takes more of a, it has a higher flash point, so you're not going to get any energy, extra performance, or anything beneficial from 91 fuel. So just run 87, that's all you need. It'll also come with quick start information on the side of the generator. You also have your fuel selector switch going from propane, natural gas, and over to your gasoline setting. Now you can start this generator 4 ways. You can pull start it, you can push button start it, you can remote start it, and then you have the automatic generator start function. So we'll go over this in a little bit. Now this generator is 10,500 starting watts on gasoline, but that drops down obviously as you go to propane and natural gas. Now again, with generators, you're not looking to run these at 100% load. You want to live at 75 to 80% for your max loads, and then above that is for the once in a while when something is starting and more. So that means if we come down here and look at these numbers, like if you want to run on propane or natural gas, if you were at 75 or 80% of that, you're going to be more around 5,000 watts. Same thing with here, you're going to be probably right about 6,000 watts at 80%. And so then you have to realize, is this generator going to be enough for you running at that consistent load? If you're wanting to charge batteries or run it consistently at that load, then will this generator have enough power for you? And if you add altitude, that's also going to have to change how you think, because every 1,000 feet you go up, you're losing about 3% of power when it comes to these generators. So if you live 4, 5, 6,000 feet, you're going to have to up a third at least. Now this is an inverter generator, so it does put out pure sine wave power. It does come with a battery charging port, but it does not come with a charger. So if you want to charge the generator, then you just have to fire it up and run it at least once every 2 months to keep that battery charged. Once a month is more ideal. You want to run it for about 10 to 15 minutes at least. You have your 120 and 240 selector switch here, so if you just want 120 volt only, or 120, 240, you have your breaker button there, carbon monoxide detector there, and maintenance light. It does come with a 50 amp plug. It does come with a L14 30 amp twist lock plug. And then you do have the 20 amp plugs with a GFI, which sometimes these can cause some issues depending. This is more for outside stuff, not connecting to your home panel. That can cause you problems sometimes. And then you have a 12 volt socket port. Now, if you are familiar with GenMax generators, they do come with this nifty fuel pump that you can plug right into the top of this thing. And then you can extend the run times of this by adding an external fuel tank, like another 6 gallons. The generator will come with parallel options. This will be for your automatic generator start, which again we'll go over, and also how that button works. You have your reset button, and then your low idle button, which we will go over. Now this does come with a lead acid battery. Now some people prefer lithium, some people prefer the lead acid battery. There's a benefit to both of them. The lead acid batteries are actually better for colder climates because you don't have to really worry about the charging factor, although the lithium batteries are going to last longer, so there is kind of a toss up there. Now this generator will need just a little bit of assembly. You'll have to put on these handles right here, also the little foot pegs right there, which is super easy. And then you will have to put on the wheels, which there is just that little pin that goes through and comes to the other side where you'll see a safety pin, and that's basically it. Now on the back of the generator, it does show all of your specs, so 32.5 amps at 240 volts, so 32 amps per leg, and this will run about 4,200 RPM, which we're going to test that. And this is a neutral floating generator. Okay, I'm going to show you guys a couple more things before we get started with load testing, sound testing, and more. But remember, I said that this was cheaper. If you look at other comparable that are inverters, but they're in the big enclosed frame, you can expect to pay sometimes double the price of what this is going to cost. The second thing I said is that they are also a lot lighter. This generator only weighs about 125 pounds. I can still lift this up and move it around if I really needed to. But when it comes to some of these other larger ones like this one right here, those things you're not going to be picking up by yourself at all. You're going to need somebody else. Now the third thing again is serviceability, and this is one of the huge benefits, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, when it comes to serviceability, what I mean is getting to the battery easily, right? If you have to change it out, super easy. Oil changes, it's right there, it's super easy. If you have to do the air box, again, super easy. Spark plug, easily accessible. And the number one reason that open frame generators are awesome is really because of this right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this off so you guys can see, get rid of you. Now this little guy underneath here is one of the most problematic things on any generator. Underneath here is your low speed jet. That plugs up all the time, super easy, and will cause hard starting conditions, rough idle, and even sometimes a no start condition. So all you have to do is pull out this little idle stop screw. Now these are super easy to service and fix. I'm going to show you real quick because it only take about a minute. But what we're going to do is I'm going to show you here. Here's a screwdriver. I got this little mark on it, right? This is going to be my 12 o'clock. What I'm going to do is put my screwdriver in. You're going to count the turns. So we're going to go 1 turn in, then we're going to go 2 turns in, all the way until it stops. So I have 2 there. This would be my 3rd turn, 4th turn, 5 turns, 6 turns, and almost 7. So that's where I'm going to put it back to. But what I'm going to do now is almost 7 turns, right? Remember that, maybe write it down. So go ahead and now what we're going to do is take this all the way out, unscrew this. Again, this is one of the most problematic parts of a generator, and this is going to save you a ton of time in troubleshooting because this takes only a few seconds. Now what we need is just some kind of a pair of little tweezers or pliers, whatever it is you're going to want to do. Take this little guy, move it out of the way, and it just has a little stopper on it. That's it. Then that right there is your low speed jet. This little guy is where all your problems are going to be when it comes to hard starting and more. So take this out. You just lift it, pry it up real gently, just a little bit. It doesn't take much. And we just slowly lift that out of there. And this guy here is what causes all of your issues. You see this little pinhole? Let me bring this up close to you guys so you can see. Okay, so you see how small that jet hole is? That gets plugged very, very easily. And all you need is really just a small piece of copper wire. It doesn't go through there. It only goes into that little hole right there. So all you're doing is really just trying to clean out this little hole. And again, I have seen these plugged up from the very beginning as soon as they leave the factory. And so once you're done, you just put it back in. You can literally just take your finger, pop that down, and the little plastic stopper, it goes right up on top, just sits right there. And then you put your screw back in. And remember, it was almost 7 turns out. So we're going to go all the way to seated again. Okay, so we're all the way to seated. Here's my turns. I need to go almost 7. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we're going to stop short. This would be 7. I'm going to go to about 6 3/4 because that's about roughly where it was. And that right there is one of the first things you want to check if you have a hard starting problem or some other type of issue, or you know what, just change your spark plug, because that is also one of the issues. That is a super cheap diagnostic tool, is spending $3, change your spark plug and see if that fixes your issue, or it's normally going to be that. Your fuel selector switch is right up here to turn on the gas. You can get to the carburetor easy, which has 2 stepper motors on it along with this choke right here. This is going to be your manual choke if the battery dies, but the stepper motors will take care of that. So it's automatic choke as long as the battery's not dead. And then you do have the carburetor, which you will have this little plunger guy. This is what stops it from flowing gasoline. It's basically just a little actuator, a little pin comes out, stops the flow of gas. And so then when you are done running this, you can turn off your gasoline and then let the carburetor run completely dry if you want, if you know you're not going to use it for a long time. And then you can also open a little drain screw, which a little bit of gasoline will come out. That way this is completely empty. Again, if you're going to be storing it for long periods of time, then that's something that you may want to do. And if you need to do valve adjustments, again with the valves, don't touch them unless the generator has an issue. There is something about don't fix something that isn't broken. So if the generator is starting fine, if it shuts off correctly and it's not backfiring, blowing smoke or doing something abnormal, then don't touch your valves. And on the back of the generator is where you will have the exhaust, and a spark arrestor screen will be in there, which you will have to service once in a while. Now when you take this out of the box, it will come with a parts list, and it will show you all the bolts and all the nuts. And then of course it shows you the wheels along with the feet and also the handles. Now one thing that is nice about GenMax is they include a lot of accessories. Not everybody does this. They give you a natural gas hose, which is about 25 feet. You do have your propane hose, which this one's about 5.5 feet. You do have this adapter, which this one here is going to go right on your generator there. And so this bigger coupler is what allows you to then hook up either your propane line or either your natural gas line using this same style larger coupling, which as you can see, that is kind of a larger one. So, and then they will give you an attachment. This is where you can actually plug this onto a natural gas line. So if you have a stub out at your house, you can actually put this on there. That way you can just easily hook up your natural gas line onto that right there, boom, right into the generator. So kind of a quick setup. You're pretty much ready to go. They also give you a cover. This fits nicely so you can store this and keep some of the dust off, because a lot of us will store this in the garage, out in sheds, maybe just outside on the side of the house. Now it will come with an oil funnel, but I do prefer using my oil extractor. I have been using this now for quite a long time, been showing people some tips and tricks using that because it's just so much easier to do your oil changes. It makes quick work out of it. You don't really get dirty and you're done in about, literally it's like 5 minutes. It will also come with a small toolkit just to do your spark plugs and a wrench just to help kind of put some of the things together, like tightening down this little guy. And then it will come with this 2-wire start cable, which again, we will go over here in just a minute. Okay, so obviously all the advantages of an open frame. Well, when you get to a closed frame, they have really one big advantage, and that is they are a lot quieter. Even though they will say these have quiet technology, which they're definitely quieter than what they used to be, like, you know, from like 5 years ago, and because they've added much bigger mufflers. But it's still not going to be able to compete with something that is an enclosed frame. It has all the boxing around it and everything, but that does add to these also running hotter. So if you have these running under hard conditions, these breathe so much better. I mean, imagine you're going for a run and you put a paper bag over your head. That's kind of what these are, but again, so much quieter. I'll show you a sound difference between the two. All right, let's use that remote. Just got to prime the line real quick. Well, and there we go. Okay, so that's on eco mode. Okay, so this is RPM at the low idle, right about 3,200. Okay, now I've done a lot of tests as far as sound testing goes right at that spot. And I use this little mark right here on the ground, which is right around 23 feet. And so right now the generator is as quiet as it goes because it's at low idle. And this is what our numbers look like. So let's go up and turn high idle on. And same spot again. Okay, now for this bigger one, and I'll show you the RPMs on this one too, with the low idle and also high idle. Okay, so this is low idle, and look at the difference, 2600. We'll go ahead and turn on high idle. Okay, so at high idle, this one's 200 RPM less at about 3800 roughly. Okay, so low idle, 23 feet away. Big difference. And now on high idle. So obviously you can see the noise difference is a major advantage to having something like that. But look at the size, also the price, also the weight. Again, if you don't need it to be quiet, if you have a big open area or you're not really too concerned, because in emergency situations, you need power. So obviously this is one of the benefits being a tri-fuel, cheaper price, much smaller footprint. The motor is actually smaller too. This one's like 328, that one's 458 cc, so much bigger engine. Now we will do a load test in a minute, but one other thing is this one has the 2-wire start. This one does not have 2-wire start, but it does have an automatic transfer switch. And they were trying to come out with one that they could release here in the USA. I don't think they've actually done it yet. Now, if you wanted to, you could void the warranty and hot wire the thing and get 2 wires out of it, and basically it's the same thing. But if you're doing stuff like that, you know, obviously you have to worry about voiding the warranty, which again, this one only has a 1-year warranty, and I think this one is the same. It might be a 2, but that is one thing I would like to see with GenMax, is to boost their warranty a little higher. Only 1 year, 2 would be nice, 3 would be more ideal, because it's a little bit more in line with some of the other competitors out there. A lot of them are 2 or 3 year versus 1. Now I wanted to show you the auto start feature. So you would take your 2-wire pin connector. It can only go in one way. There is a little slot, and so you'll just plug this in. Now again, this isn't going to be for everybody, but for those who want to do it. So we'll plug this guy in here. You're going to go to Auto Gen Start button right here, turn that guy on. Then you're going to go up here, turn you on. And now what will happen is that the generator will be in standby. And so eventually it will go to sleep and it'll just sit here and do nothing. And so you'll just plug these into the battery system that you have. One of them will go into a common, the other one will go into whatever it is it's going to tell you to, usually like a number 1 switch. And then basically what happens is that these 2 wires, once it says to turn on, the relay will basically create a connection. And that is all it is, which they even make some aftermarket relay switches that you can buy, that you can, I think, Bluetooth remote start this stuff. So you can put this into the aftermarket relay and then, you know, hook the Bluetooth up to your phone, and then boom, away you go. And you don't even need, you know, a big battery system. Okay, load test time. So I have this hooked up. We're going to load this all the way up to max on propane, and we're going to keep track of some information, as you can see there on the left. We're also going to take a look at the pure sine wave, and we'll watch that and see what it looks like for distortion. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more load to this, bring it up to around 1400 or so. And so far things are looking fine, so we'll bump this up to about 2000 watts. Keep an eye on everything as we look up here on the display. So our voltage so far matches if you look at leg 1 and leg 2. And then this is on low idle. That's our hertz, so that's just fluctuating a little bit, as you'll see on the meter. As long as we don't get a lot of distortion on that, that'll be okay. And that's the amps per leg. So far everything seems to be matching up, and about 3200 watts now as we continue to increase the load. So as we continue to look at the voltage, we want to make sure this doesn't drop too low. 110 and above is what we want. National Electrician Code is 114. But so far everything is looking good and matching up. It's handling the load just fine as we bump it up a little bit more. So we're going to bring this up almost to about 4000 watts, and now take a look at our sine wave. And what we're really looking for is the peaks and valleys. That little kick out there, that's where it's plugged into the load device. But so far the wave looks nice. There's a slight amount of distortion, but again, these are rated to be able to have 3 to 5% distortion. More than that, it starts to get bad. But up there, and then also the valleys down below, we want to make sure these kind of stay consistent, looking just how they are. But so far the generator is doing fine. We're definitely running a little bit more load now, as you can see, as we get closer to about 100% load, at least as far as propane, because this is where you have to see where that 75 to kind of 80% load is. Personally, I'd run about 70%, but 80% would be about 5,600 watts on propane, which is about where we are at now. And you can see the gauge up there, it does say 100%, so 5,700 watts roughly. But the generator is still running fine. Again, we are on propane, but so far we're going to bump this up a little bit higher and see what it does. I don't always trust those gauges because I do see some of them kind of fluctuate a little bit. It's just kind of giving you an indicator, again, of about where you are, but this is where you will have to determine if this generator is going to have enough power for you. But so far the voltage still looks good. We're getting closer to our max wattage, as we are now at 6,000. Slight distortion on the wave, but nothing bad. I've seen worse on some of the old generators. As we bump up our load a little bit higher, we're going to kind of get over 7,000 here in a second. So as we start to look, our voltage still stays the same, staying above the 114, which is great. As we continue to load up a little bit higher, I'm going to bump this just over 7,000. And we'll see if this wave gets dirty as we get to max load, basically. But up there, it's still pretty much the same, slightly more distorted than where we were, but so far still doing good. And we are now going to bump up this load a little bit more. So let me increase this. We're going to go all the way above 7,000 now. So as we take a look up here, voltage is still hanging in, and the hertz still looks good. Slight fluctuation. Almost a max of 32 amps per leg. But now you can see that we're about 7,200 watts now. And so this is max, or actually over max, on propane. So far still doing good as far as voltage drop, well acceptable. And the distortion levels on the dips and also the peaks still look to be the same, not much change. So overall, this is doing fine. But you're not going to want to run this here all the time. Again, you're going to want to stay at 70 to 80% load max. And when you're peaking out, that's just for once in a while. Okay, I did want to show you something, is that this 30 amp plug right here is going to probably be your primary plug, since this only really does about 30 amps, give or take. And again, you're not supposed to run it at 100%. So then you do have your 50 amp plug, but I only found one problem with this. I'll kind of show you real quick. So depending on the type of 50 amp plug you get, it gets just a little bit snug right here where the wheel is. I mean, you can see this one here fits fine and it's plugged in and not doing anything. And that works, which you honestly don't need these really with generators. You only need those when you're plugged into like shore power and you're unsure of like how well that shore power is. And now if we take a look at this 50 amp cord, this is more of a smaller profile. And you can see this one fits just fine. But just so you guys can see, I have this really heavy duty RV 50 amp cord. This one's like super thick. It's kind of like a heavy duty style, but it just kind of sits there and rubs the tire. Just so you know, it's not too big of a deal. If you kind of shove it back here, it actually fits just fine. Just know that when you're plugging it in, at least up there, the wheel may get in the way, so you have to do a little bit of cord maneuvering on that. That's really all I found so far. And I did talk to them about that, and they said they may actually be flipping these two. They'll put this one here, move this plug over here, which would definitely be more ideal, just because of the wire being in the way of the wheel, or vice versa. It does work. It's just, you know, just a little bit in the way, but it's still good, just so you guys can know about that. So let's talk about a couple other things. Now, I have several people who are going to ask, well, is this generator reliable? Well, just like a new car or a new truck, I don't really know yet because there's no time on it. You have to get a few months months in to have some other buyers get it, also so I can run it more. That way I can determine, well, is this model good? Now, GenMax has been around for a long time making generators for their own line, which is GenMax, but Dinkin Power makes a lot of generators for a lot of other companies that you probably don't even know about. Now, when it comes to features, this thing is definitely loaded, especially with the 2-wire start. I think that's going to be a game changer for a lot of people, and right now GenMax is the only one that has it. Now, is this generator right for you? Well, that's what you're going to have to decide is, does this have enough power? Do you live up in altitude? Is the noise going to be an issue? You can always build a box or buy a box to put around it. But again, when it does come to open frame generators, they are so much easier to work on. And again, not to mention they are cheaper, they're a lot lighter. And also GenMax was nice enough to include some discounts, which you can find out down below. I hope this video helped you out, and I hope to see you in another one.